Today's lesson will be from Chapter 5 and it's Lesson 9, and our objective is to subtract decimals using models. Before we start our lesson, it's important to review place value for decimals. We know that anytime we have a decimal, we can add a 0 to the end of it, and it will be worth the same. It'll be equal or equivalent. So we know that we have 3/10, and if we add a 0 to the end of it, the 3/10 is also equal to 30/100. On this slide, we will go through the steps for how to subtract decimals using models. You don't need to copy down the model in your notebook, but I would like you to copy down the blue instructions, so each step to do this. For this problem, we are going to be finding 2 4/10, subtract 1 7/100, and we're going to do it using models. Step number 1 says, use 10 by 10 grids to model 2 4/10. To show 2 4/10, shade 2 whole grids and 4/10 of a third grid. We know that 4/10 is equal to 40 small squares. I want to shade in my 2 whole grids, so I have that grid, and then I have that grid, and then I need to shade in 40 small squares. Next, we want to subtract 1 7/100. To subtract 1 7/100, we need to cross out 1 whole grid and then 7/100 of the third grid. You want to include that we cross out in your notes. So I'm going to cross out 1 whole grid, and then I want to cross out 7/100 of the third grid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we want to count the remaining shaded squares. That's step number 3. So how many ones do we have left? We have 1 whole grid. How many tenths are there? If we come over to this side, I can see that I have 3 full strips. So I have 3/10. And then how many hundredths are there? I want to count these top 3. So I have 1, 2, 3. So I have 3 hundredths left. So if I had 2 4/10 and I subtract 1 7/100, I have 1 33/100 left. For our next problems, we want to go through the steps again. So for this problem, we're doing 1 66/100, subtract 84/100, and we want to use models. So step number 1 will be to show 1 66/100 on the grid. So we want to shade in 1 whole grid and then 66/100 of a second grid. So I'll shade in 1 whole grid and then 66/100. We know that 66/100 is equal to 66 small squares. Our next step, step number 2, is to subtract 84/100. To subtract 84/100, we want to cross out 4 hundredths and 8/10. So I can cross out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and because there's no more tenths on that model, I want to go to the other grid. And so I've done 6 so far, so I want to cross out 2 more. So now I've crossed out 8/10, and I still need to cross out 4 hundredths. So I'm going to come back to this model on the right, and I'll cross out 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Step number 3 is to count the remaining shaded squares. So I want to count the rest of the red squares. How many ones are there? I don't have a whole grid anymore that's shaded 1. Or shaded red, so I can just put a 0 there. How many tenths are there? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths right here. So I know that I have 8/10 total. And then how many hundredths are there? I have 2 hundredths in that model right there. So I have 2 hundredths. So 1 and 66 hundredths subtract 84 hundredths would be 82 hundredths. That's how much is still shaded red on my model. For these two problems, I want you to pause the video, see if you can go through the steps and find the answer using the models, and then unpause the video and check to see if you got the right answer. To solve the problem on the left, the first thing that I want to do is shade in 93 hundredths, because that's the first number that we have. To do that, I can shade in 9 rows. And then I need to shade in 3 hundredths. So now this model shows that we have 93 hundredths. The next step is to cross out 7/10. So I can take my black color, or if you're just doing it in your notebook, you can cross out using X's. But I can cross out 7/10. So I want to cross out 7 of these rows. So it's 4, 5, 6, 7. The third step is to see how much is still shaded in red. So I know that I have 2/10 right here, and I have 3 hundredths right here. So if I were to write this as a decimal, I would put my decimal point, and then I have 2/10, so I'd put a 2 in the tenths place, and then I have 3 hundredths, so I would put a 3 in the hundredths place. So I know that 93 hundredths subtract 7/10 equals 23 hundredths. For the problem on the right, the first thing that I want to do is shade in the number on the left. So we have 1 and 53 hundredths. I want to shade in one whole grid, and then I want to shade in 53 hundredths. So there's 50 right there, and then I can shade in 3 extras. Our next step is with another color, or in your notes you can just use X's. I want to cross out the second number. So I have 1 and 41 hundredths. I can cross out one whole grid, and then I need to cross out 41 hundredths on this right grid. So I can cross out 4 rows, and that will show me 40 hundredths. And then I have one more hundredth that I need to cross out right there. Our third step is just to see how much we have left. So if I were to count our hundredths, I have 12 hundredths left. So to write this as a decimal, I would put my decimal point and then a 1 in the tenths place and a 2 in the hundredths place. So I know that 1 and 53 hundredths subtract 1 and 41 hundredths is just equal to 12 hundredths. For your independent practice problems, you should have a sheet that you glued into your notebook before going home tonight. Your 4 independent practice problems will be on that sheet. Make sure that you do that at home so that your teacher can come and correct it in the morning. Thank you.